Life has its battles, sorrows and regret, but in the shadows, let us not forget. We who now gather know each other's pain. Kindness can heal us as we give, we gain. Sing now in friendship this our heart's own song.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where our mission is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world, or, as we say in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Welcome, everyone. Great to have you. Great to see you. I want to begin, as always, by embracing all that you come with this morning, all of your uniqueness, your unique beliefs, your background, your lifestyle, your experiences, your differences, all that helps make you who you are. And this includes those of you in the room who hear me say this each Sunday, as well as those who might be joining us for the first time. And of course, the many of you who are streaming with us this morning. So good to have all of you here too. And you're all equally as welcome and equally as embraced. So welcome to one and all. And for the folks who are in the room here for our first service, you've sort of, for the most part, cloistered together. So I think it's probably chilly in here, so you're huddling up. So now that you're comfortable, why don't you take a few moments to greet one another? I don't even know if you have to stand up today. You could just sit there and have a conversation, but... Okay, and I do hope you'll stay for our social hour following the service for more conversation. But let's move forward now by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
Hospitality is not to change people, but to offer them space where change can take place. It is not to bring men and women over to our side, but to offer freedom not disturbed by dividing lines. It is not to lead our neighbor into a corner where there are no alternatives left, but to open a wide spectrum of options for choice and commitment. It is not an educated intimidation with good books and good works, but the liberation of fearful hearts so that words can find roots and bear ample fruit. J.M. Newen.
Our first in-service hymn of the morning is As Tranquil Streams. Would you please rise as you're willing and able? As tranquil streams that meet and merge and flow as one to seek the sea, our kindred minds unite to build a church that shall be free, free from the bonds that bind the mind to narrow thought and lifeless greed, free from a social call that fails to serve the cause of human need, a freedom that reveres the past but trusts the dawning future more, and it's the soul in search of truth that venture boldly and explore. Prophetic church, the future waits your liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love, proclaim the truth that makes us free.
We will now kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds this morning. And we begin, as we have for some time now, for our friends in the Ukraine, as well as other parts of that world that are being impacted by the violence and destruction there. Also for church member Carol Canterbury. Her sister passed away earlier this month, Ruth Ann Wortman. Happened to bump into Carol yesterday at a bookstore, and she misses her sister. So please let her know you're thinking about her at this time as well. Let's take a moment of silence on behalf of others you might be thinking of, and as usual, you're welcome to name them out loud if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. And we now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which helps sustain this community and our mission to the larger world.
Stars in the tile, wood trim on the sill, eyes in the back of a chair in which you refuse to join me. It's like these holiday lights are glowing for the blind, typical of a fleeting home, a camp for the sleepless, a refuge for the sane, like a dog who only goes your way. To maintain composure in the wake of a war is to swallow the echo of a scream, like the landscape of a holy moon, landscape of a holy moon, like the landscape of a holy moon, landscape of a holy moon.
Good morning. Thank you, Dario, for the beautiful meditative song. I believe you're happy today, are you? I'm not happy about this heat wave. Although, as a rule, man is a fool. When it's hot, he wants it cool. When it's cool, he wants it hot. He always wants what he has not. And here's a story about unhappy crow. Once a crow was flying over a park and saw a swan swimming in the pond. Admiring the beauty of the swan, the crow said, "I wish I looked like this bird with white feathers all over me. My black feathers are so depressing. When you are as beautiful as a swan, you must be very happy." The crow approached the pond to talk to the swan. Said the crow, "Look at me. I'm black and ugly, and you're so white and beautiful. Are you happy about your appearance?" "You should see the parrot," said the swan. "This bird is more colorful than you or me." Next, the crow was looking for a parrot. He wanted to find out if the bird with more colors feels happy about the way it looks. The crow saw the parrot and said, "Indeed, you're much more beautiful than a swan. to say nothing about myself. You must be very happy about it." The parrot shook its head. Not at all. There is a most beautiful bird in the zoo. It's a multicolored peacock. Now it was time for the crow to find the peacock and have the answer to the question if its beauty makes the bird feel happy. And there, at the zoo, the crow watched the peacock slowly spreading its 4 feet long tail with 175 colorful feathers. This incredible sight took the crow's breath away. "Wow, wow, what a beauty you are. With a beauty like this, the peacock must be the happiest bird in the world," said the crow. A little sparrow heard the crow's words and began chirping. "Nope, no, nope, no. Because of its tail, the peacock cannot fly far. It is trapped and kept inside, while we are free. Guess who is happy? By the way, look at the people around. You can tell not all of them are good looking. However, they're happy because they can enjoy the peacock's beauty." On hearing this, the crow thought that it was really foolish of him to compare himself to the other birds. This bird came to realize he would be thankful to be the way he is. Really, it's not what we have or who we are that makes us happy. It's what we do. It's all about things that bring us joy and make us feel happy.
For this morning's meditation, the words of Brené Brown. Connection is the energy that is created between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment.
heart is hurt and swollen. Even a breeze feels like a storm, where not a wing can fly for certain, and even a flame can't keep it warm. I hate your voice. Tell me to change my point of view. Tell me to lift my chin for you. Show me the end. Tell me to change. But if it be the last trail home, take a moment of repose. Ignore the signs and find Huckleberry Hill. You wonder why, just wait for the sky to clear.
Dario, it's always great to have you with us. Thank you so much for sharing your time and talent with us. I think I don't do these so-called conversations with Todd very often, but I think the last time you were here, or at least the time before, I did one as well. So because I remember you asking a question. So, but your music leaves me speechless. So I didn't bring a speech. I just. Yeah, so speaking of which, I wonder if Tom or Betty, if either of you would mind going around with the handheld microphone so that I won't have to. Tom got a sign. I saw. Todd will set one up for you there. So for those who aren't familiar, in case you're not familiar, this is what I playfully call Conversations with Todd, and you probably don't remember why. That was a bit of a pun. Many years ago, there was a book series called Conversations with God, and so I thought that is kind of where I got the title from. No narcissism there. But anyway, what's that? Just a natural progression. Yes, you've got to be upwardly mobile, and. So this is a time where I just like to field questions from the congregation, from things that might be on your mind, maybe about things I've spoken about in the past, or things I've not spoken about that you're interested in. It's not a church business meeting; it is a worship service, so I don't like to deal with church business. But otherwise, I'm pretty open to whatever you might ask, and I also ask that you don't offer too many rhetorical questions or questions that are full of a lot of rhetoric. But it's sort of a genuine question if you can. So those are the rules. And do you have a question, Tom? Or are you? Oh, here comes the microphone. Tom's ready to go this morning.
I'm having a frog in my throat this morning. My name's Tom Mosier. My question is something that's been on my mind and probably on the mind of a lot of others, and that is with the progression of the January 6th committee and the implications to many of us that there are a number of criminal offenses that have been committed. What concerns me is if there are criminal charges brought against the persons responsible for this catastrophe, there's one scenario of happiness on the parts of others and actual anger and possibly dangerous confrontation on the others. And if there are, if it goes the other way, then there's a whole other set of possibilities. Do you have any thoughts on where either one of the scenarios with criminal charges or without criminal charges, how that will play out in our society?
Well, first thing I would like to address is what you've presented us with, a very good ethical dilemma and an ethical discussion, which is a very appropriate thing to discuss. I think in churches we should be discussing ethics. And so it is really a tension between a classical division in ethical theory. One is what you would call deontological ethics, and that is rule-based ethics, where you always sort of follow the rules no matter what the outcome, right? So a deontological response to this dilemma would be, well, if Donald Trump has done something that has violated the law, then he should be charged with that violation regardless of the outcome. The other side of it would be the teleological, the outcome-based ethics, which would say, well, no, actually we should be more concerned with the outcome. Is the outcome just? I mean, we're dealing with a lot of injustice in our criminal justice system these days because following the letter of the law has not turned out as just as it should be for many people, right? So the teleological will say, no, we really need to look at the outcome, and sometimes, in fact, we have to do civil disobedience to disobey the rules in order to have a just outcome. So that's the dilemma here, right? The real dilemma is, Donald Trump has done, is accused, or certainly the evidence looks like he encouraged, to say the least, the insurrection on January 6th. One ethic says he's got to be charged for that, regardless of the outcome. Otherwise, justice is not blind, right? The other outcome is, well, yeah, but the ramifications on our society could be really bad. There could be violence, there could be riots, there could be lots of things we could be scared of. So we should probably, not do that. There is a third ethic, and I used to consider myself a teleologist. I always thought we should be really looking at the outcome. If the ends don't justify the means, what does? I mean, what does it? Why should anything matter if it's not a positive outcome that we're seeking? But I have moved more towards what you would call virtue ethics, and virtue ethics is kind of a combination of them both, because rather than saying there are certain rules or laws or even principles that you should adhere to all of the time, there are certain virtues, like justice, like equality, like peace, like human welfare, these sort of things that we should be the goals of everything, the goal of everything that we do. And if doing them puts us in a bad situation, it doesn't matter. If doing so brings us prosperity, that doesn't matter either, right? It's not Buddha's middle way, is not the answer. It's saying that whether it brings us pain or pleasure is not what's important. What's important is the virtue. So I think, in the past 3 years, I have tried to pursue my own virtues regardless of the outcomes. And sometimes that's brought me pain and sometimes it's brought me pleasure. But the point is to uphold those virtues, which you often hear me summarize as freedom, reason, and tolerance, which are the core of liberalism, historically. So having said that, I don't think that I can predict what is going to happen, Tom. I have the same questions as you. Question number one, is the DOJ going to do anything? I think they should, unless they don't think that they have enough to prosecute the president on. That's the key. If they do, they should, just as sure as they would prosecute anybody else for committing a crime that they have evidence has been committed. That's kind of a deontological question, but I think because the higher value, again, is fairness, right? That justice is blind, that nobody is above the law. This is a certain values that come from a virtue of fairness and equality. So I think we have to, in this case, whether it brings us pain or pleasure as a society, or pain as Republicans and pleasure as Democrats, whatever the case might be, that's inconsequential to the fact that did he commit the crimes, and in the spirit of fairness, if so, the DOJ should do its job. That obviously could lead to, again, some of the things we're afraid of. It could fear, riots, domestic terrorism, lots of things that we don't need right now because we've already experienced far too much and are still experiencing far too much as a society these past few years. Between Trump's election, which I personally consider a global disaster, to the emergence of COVID-19, to the economic impacts of COVID-19, to the war in Ukraine, which seems to be creating some scary dividing lines in the world. So we've got a lot to worry about. The overturning Roe versus Wade. These are just really big deals. Global warming, the planet burning up in places this summer that they're unprecedented, drying up. We don't need any more pain. So my response would be, however, we've got to uphold our virtues. So hope that answered. Was a good response. Yes, Mary Ann.
You spoke to me, Mary Ann Winiford, you spoke to me briefly about perhaps peak wokeism has come and perhaps gone, and I wondered if you could talk a little more about that. Yeah, and let me just say, I use the term woke or wokeism very loosely. I often will say, this phenomenon, cancel culture, wokeism, PC, because I don't like labeling people. We're much too complicated to be labeled in those terms, right? So I notice there is a trend now in the UUA to refer to people as gadflies, the gadflies, and it really reduces people to a joke, to a punchline, right? To a philosophy, a way of being in the world that we all automatically know, and we don't. Okay, and it's the same with people who ascribe to this mindset that is very widespread throughout Western culture right now, that some refer to as wokeism. John McWhorter calls it woke racism. It's been called political correctness, cancel culture. I personally prefer the term illiberalism. Because, again, liberalism is rooted in these values, these virtues that can be summarized as freedom, reason, and tolerance, really under the wider umbrella of recognizing our common humanity. Right? When you recognize our common humanity,
You've got to have freedom for everybody under that umbrella. You've got to treat each other reasonably, approach each other with reason, and we've got to learn to tolerate one another no matter our differences. So the larger the umbrella becomes, the more we interact through those values, and that's what liberalism is about. It's about creating a wider umbrella so that more and more people are relating to one another through these virtues. So I find this mindset primarily a violation of those principles that I hold most sacred in my journey in this world. So for people that work against or work in ways that damage the freedom of others, that do not value reason when it comes to the truths that we are asked to accept, and are unwilling to tolerate anyone who has different ideas in particular, is a form of illiberalism. Why do I think that it has reached a peak? I think that it has reached a peak because, one, it is so widespread. It is really something that is impacting Western culture throughout the world, not just here in the U.S. But it has also, there's two big things have happened. One, enough people have found the courage to come out and start talking about what's going on. People are not as afraid of being canceled as they once were. At least some aren't afraid of being canceled. Some have been canceled and they just like, it was okay, hey, I've been canceled, you know. I met one guy in Denver at the Heterodox Academy, a professor who'd been canceled, and he said, wow, you know, that hurt, but hey, I'm still here. Well, let's go again, you know. So there's that kind of attitude, right, where more and more people are pushing back. You see, even the New York Times is turning around. They're starting to talk a lot more about the flaws in this, and they're hiring people like John McWhorter to be, some of their columnists. And this is the paper that not too long ago, conservative, moderate Barry Weiss very publicly resigned from because she said she was afraid to go to work. It was that afraid to say what she wanted to say. So you have anecdotes like that, but primarily the biggest reason is that this has devastated progressive organizations throughout the world, particularly in the U.S. So academia, professors are afraid of their own shadows there now, and that's not really hyperbole. I mean, professors are afraid to talk, afraid to teach. It's a widespread phenomenon. But progressive organizations like abortion rights groups, the ACLU, the Unitarian Universalist Association, even other more progressive religions, the Sierra Club, local Democratic organizations like the Spokane County Democrats, are being destroyed from within. They cannot function. They cannot accomplish what it is they've got to accomplish because their own members are accusing them of being white supremacist organizations. And everything they do is some horrendous crime against humanity, using the wrong pronoun unintentionally in most cases. Could be the end of a person's career in many of these organizations. So I think it's reached the point where many of these organizations have realized we can't, either we just close shop because we can't accomplish anything, or we have to do something different. And so now there is a need for us as a society to find a different approach to this. And I think being able to frame what's going on is a big part of it. That's why people are starting to settle on woke or wokeism. They want to kind of frame it in a way that we understand it and then be able to point it out. And I think eventually what will happen is that mindset, rather than being a dominant meme, will become a meme that most of us recognize and find it laughable at the very least, but something that will be frowned upon. And it will begin to go away on its own for that reason. What we're probably looking at, in my opinion, just studying how things work in society, I think we're looking at about 10 years. I think things are going to radically improve within the next 5 years. But there will be holdouts like the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association, has become a fundamentalist cult, and they're rather isolated from some of these other workings in the world. And so we like many religions, our leadership will cling to this ideology a lot longer than it should. So probably we're looking, early to late 2030s before it works itself out of the Unitarian Universalist Association. And that includes, right now 6 years to overturn a presidency and a moderator and board. So it's going to be a while before it's out of the Unitarian Universalist Association. But I think we're going to start seeing pretty radical changes within the next 5 years, and this mindset is going to begin to dissipate, have less impact. Yeah, Karen Dick? Yeah.
Karen Dorn-Steele. When I first moved to Spokane around 1969-70, I worked on the first abortion rights referendum, which we passed in the state in 1970, abortion rights at the ballot box by referendum 3 years before Roe v. Wade, and those rights were subsequently strengthened. A coalition of progressive ministers worked very hard on that referendum. And also, when you came 10, 11 years ago, you worked very hard on the marriage equality, gay rights referendum that also passed. But you worked with a coalition of progressive ministers in eastern Washington. And I'm wondering what's happened to those progressive coalitions of religious progressives, and could they be reinstated for current issues, the new assault on abortion rights, the homelessness issue in Spokane, et cetera? Where have they gone, and should they be reinstated, I guess is my question.
Yeah, they should be reinstated. That particular organization, and I'm even forgetting the name of it, Progressive Pastors, I think, or something it was called, it has just kind of gone away. There are still a lot of progressive pastors in the area. Some of them have retired. I think a couple of things have happened to make that work harder. One is the illiberalism I'm talking about. It has impacted churches. Many ministers are afraid to say, sometimes to say things that are meaningful because they might get in trouble for slipping up, for a gaffe, if you will. Some of those ministers were, old white guys like me, and that mindset sort of looks at us as a symbol of the problem to begin with. So we are left out of a lot of social justice efforts. We're not invited to participate like we once were. As for me, I still have friends in the local ministry that I and a very diverse group of ministers that are very close friends of mine, but we've not really been able to come together to work on things. A big part of it also is since I have been canceled myself. Canceled people have cooties, so even the progressives who, maybe respect me and would consider themselves my friends, they stay away. I mean, I'm not in communication with many of them. Oddly enough, my two best colleagues here in town our Happy Watkins, who a lot of you know. He's African American Baptist minister, and Walter Kendricks, really, really dear, I consider him a brother, who's also African American. And we get together regularly, and meet and visit and just support each other. We talk about the issues that we're concerned about and the loss at which we are to do anything about them, but at least we cry on each other's shoulders, if you will. So I think that's probably, the best way for me to articulate what I've seen kind of happen these past few years. And then, of course, being in lockdown for 2 or 3 years really kind of messed things up as well. But I've seen a lot of, there's a lot of the old white guys that I used to see out there when we were in the streets at demonstrations or speaking that, in some cases have just they called me up after my book, to share how they were being treated by this community. And, in some cases told to, keep your mouth shut, and, stay back, stay out of it. Sometimes with tears in their eyes. So I think there's a lot of that is messed. It's part of what has gotten messed up by this illiberalism. The big thing for me is that we, the mindset of tolerance is that we should be more inclusive. That's what makes things better. It always has, right? That's why gay marriage became legal, because more and more of us were exposed to friends who were gay. I used to have a friend, a colleague actually, a Unitarian minister, is a lesbian. Terrible experience in her life. She was forced to be straight. She was forced to go to counseling. She never, all that kind of stuff. She was of that era in the 50s, where it was seen as a disease. And she talked about when the first Pride parades started. You started seeing them. There's always on the news. You would see people in these outlandish outfits and doing crazy things. And she said, yeah, because you had to be crazy to come out as gay. Right? So it was the craziest people we saw. Those were the ones that were courageous enough. But time has been marching on, and we don't see that. I think we had the biggest Pride parade in Spokane's history just this last month here in Spokane, and we get to see people who are free to be as crazy as they want as well, but also people that just aren't, and we know that we know because of that, because those people stepped out early on, had the courage to do so, that more and more people began to step out, and we started to, oh yeah, my kids are gay, my parents are gay, my family is gay, my friends are gay, my neighbors are gay, my teachers are gay, and it doesn't matter. And that's what caused that shift. If you remember, when George W. Bush ran for the first time, he basically ran on the sanctity of marriage, which, by the way, is unconstitutional. You're not supposed to create laws based on religious perspectives, but he was actively promoting his religious perspective that marriage is sacred, right? The sanctity of marriage. Anyway, another story. But 4 years later, right, just 4 years later, he couldn't do that anymore because we had advanced that much, And by the time Obama had come along, he had to evolve on the subject, right? Remember that? He had to evolve on the subject because it happened so quickly after he was elected that it was time for him to get on board, or it was politically safe for him to get on board. So that was a very quick change in our society where the popular belief about gay marriage shifted radically. And I don't even know why I brought that up, but that's perhaps part of what is going to happen with the wokeism or the illiberalism, that it is going to shift rather radically all of a sudden. Wish we could do it with global warming.
My name's Dan Egret. I have a question kind of along the lines of what Tom brought up. watching these, back to the congressional hearings that have been going on, it was interesting to me to see a mix of Democrats and Republicans up there with Liz Cheney and so on, up there, and they were all talking in the same direction and covering in detail what happened in the Capitol riots. Do you feel that there's some optimism in seeing something like this where we have both Democrats and Republicans pulling together? Or do you think it might be a political play from the standpoint of keeping Trump out of office next time?
I don't feel very positive that the Republicans and Democrats are ever going to be able to accomplish much in this country again. Not until systems change. So we're going to have some severe systemic changes or attitudinal adjustments. Like, you know, I said in a sermon a couple of weeks ago, not only are we a divided nation, we're a divisive nation. That is, we have created a culture in which we think it's appropriate to be divisive with those we disagree with, and that's true on both the far left, as we're now seeing with this illiberalism, as well as the far right. That you know, if you disagree with anybody, you attack them. And we saw this start to happen with the advent of Fox News in the 1990s, or Rush Limbaugh, and then it has spread throughout much of the news media. And it's also, you know, I think generations of kids now have grown up seeing that this is how you treat people who think differently than you. And you know, there's even the mindset now that you know, people who disagree with us are dangerous or they are harmful, right? And so we must do whatever we need to protect ourselves from those harmful thoughts, those destructive thoughts, those dangerous thoughts. And we create the evil others, and that's where we're at. I mean, we in my opinion, there are at least two nations occupying the same space right now. I don't think that's getting better. I think those Republicans who agreed to get on that committee are oddly enough an old school and a new school, you know, Republican, but they're bearing the cost politically for doing what they're doing. They're traitors. You know, and they're going to have to bear that cost. Now, obviously, some point down the road, they'll be held as heroes. We don't know how long that will be, or at least their courage will be recognized, acknowledged. I'm confident of that. But what I think has to happen has to start happening in our K-12 classrooms. We have to return to becoming a civil society, and that means teaching civics. And teaching tolerance, really teaching those liberal values that were the precursor to public education, right? Horace Mann was actually a Unitarian, you know, as well as a founder of our country. So, you know, education should not be about teaching kids what to think, but how to think. And part of that, how to think, should be, you know, helping them not be afraid of things they disagree with. We shouldn't be afraid of things we disagree with. That's ridiculous, right? And we should all be free to express ourselves, including those we disagree with, and especially those we disagree with when we disagree with them. We must honor that right. And we have to be tolerant of those with differences. You know, that, by the way, tolerance is the least we can do. It's not the best we can do. Tolerance is just a way of saying we can still occupy the same space and work together and live together. We don't have to like each other, but, you know, we share the same space. We should really transcend tolerance. You know, that's the bare minimum. And of course, you know, I think the education should be based on evidence-based and logical analysis. We should, you know, for everything we believe, we should have a why, a rational why. In our society today, Most people think it's enough just to say, this is what I believe. I think this, I think that. You ever in a conversation, well, here's what I think this, I think that. Why? Why do you think that? You know, when we don't ask, I don't even hear journalists ask that anymore. They just report what somebody says. So-and-so says this. Well, why did they say it? So, maybe one more. Okay, Dick. One, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Richard Steele. So you mentioned climate change, and to my simplistic way of thinking, that should be something that provides an opportunity for sort of transcending the most banal of political positions. And yet it just seems not to. That is to say, whether or not you think we're hurtling down towards a planet that's going to be burned up and we're all going to suffer, that, you know, there's a camp that still thinks there are winners and losers and zero-sum game, and we're going to be the winners. What are your thoughts about how to engage on matters of climate change, both, you know, within the church and then within our city and within the society?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good question. Good question. I think the best thing we can do is to do our best in our own habits. It seems really incremental, but it is making a difference. It is making a difference. I read something from a climate scientist earlier, you know, who said, you know, it's going to be hot. The planet's heating up, but it's probably not going to get to that 2.7 degrees higher that we're afraid of. Why? Because the reduction in green energy and the plethora of green energy alternatives that are emerging are actually making a difference. The Climate Paris Agreement is actually making a difference. So it is starting to have an impact on the environment, and that's mostly being caused by hybrid vehicles, the popularity of hybrid vehicles and solar panels and wind power, and people cutting back on, you know, some of the things they're doing. So I think that's the best thing we can do. It saddens me that, you know, it's like, especially I think Republicans do this. I'm not to be partisan, but I am partisan. But there's this thing that if a Democrat says it must be wrong. We have to be against it. You're for vaccines? We're not. We're the anti-vaccine party. Since when? Well, since the Democrats said we should get vaccinated. You know, it's like you can't make any sense of this. So kind of like with Dan, I just don't have any hope that those things are going to work themselves. These is a very dysfunctional political system. The good news is, I think it's good. I'm going to actually give a sermon on this topic next month, which I've given a few already. But the unification of human society is really upon us. It's already happened. And I've been collecting a whole list of the many ways in which we have become one world, even though we don't talk as if we are one world. And this has crippled nations, nationalistic governments, right? The age of the nation state was very short-lived. In 150 years, we tend to think that nations have been around always. They haven't been. And they've become very dysfunctional in a globalized world because we don't need them. What we do need doesn't exist yet. And so there's a lot of folks who identify as an American, for example, or a Russian, or something else, who are clinging to that identity in a world in a new world, a new reality that they don't have words for. Most people aren't even talking about, and so they're clinging to the one thing they know, and they're coming up with things like Brexit, and they're electing these tyrants, these oligarchs, these authoritarians like Donald Trump. You have people like Putin who says, no, we're going to go back to the Cold War. Can't do it. You can't do it. Brexit. You can't do it. We're connected now. There's no iron curtains to hide behind. There is no Brexit. My God, you're part of a global community. There's global economies. There's global pandemics. There's a global environment. There's global businesses. There's global employment. There, on and on the list goes. So we're already there, and that means there are certain organizations that transcend nationalism, right? The two big organizations that have really taken advantage of this are transnational corporations and environmentalists, right? Environmentalists have to connect with the world in order to have an impact on a global problem, and transnational corporations have been able to get away with murder for a long time because they're not bound to any one country, right? So there's a lot more freedom there. But as I've said many times, corporations are not people, but they are created by people, and they are staffed by people, and they are occupied by people. And as a humanist who has a positive view of humanity, and as an individual who has been able to relate to many of these people who are involved in these businesses, these corporations, they are good people who share our concerns and are doing everything they can do to work to make some of the changes. So I have hope that we're going to turn global warming around. I actually think we are turning it around, but it is a mistake on so many fronts for us to say we've just got to get the right president in, or we've just got to get the right politician in because our government is going to handle things for us. They're not. What we are seeing is more pressure on local governments, particularly big cities. So it's a return really to a city-state era right now where the big cities are really handling the problems that the national government is failing to. And you see this, in California, where you have, California basically kept the Paris Climate Agreement going because they said, we're staying in. Oh, you want to put the National Guard at our border to keep immigrants out? No, we're not going to do that. There's Arnold Schwarzenegger, No, I'm not going to do that. So, and then you have, conversely, you have states like Texas saying we're going to snub our nose at the Roe v. Wade, at the national law, and we're just going to make up our own laws. What are you going to do about it? You see what's happening, right? The national government has failed. It's failed to lead, and it can't because it's in a new reality that makes no sense. So locally, we have to fill our own potholes, so to speak. Okay, that's what I think.
Why God?
Why? Did I not mention why?
Wow, I've been away for a while on using up some vacation time. It is a breath of fresh air to be back here. Thank you all for your questions and your excellent answers. Wow. And now I have to say, turn your minds away from those serious questions. We're going to do a summertime tune here. Frank Sinatra had a big hit back quite a ways now with this one. And I'm assuming that some of you know this one. We're going to sing Cruising Down the River. Please rise as you're willing and able. Okay, I didn't get that key.
Sorry, okay.
Cruising down the river on a Sunday afternoon with ones you love, the sun above, waiting for the moon, the old accordion playing a sentimental
For the benediction, words from the Dalai Lama about the true meaning of life. We are visitors on this planet. We are here for 90 or 100 years at the very most. During that period, we must try to do something good, something useful with our lives. If you contribute to other people's happiness, you will find the true goal, the true meaning of life. Amen, blessed be, salam alaikum, and shalom.